Hello and welcome to the Mum Show. Coming up on today's show, we are joined by singer and mum of three, Hope Plumb, as we explore how to help understand race and diversity with our children. So get comfortable, grab yourself a cup of tea and let's get started. To another episode of The Mum Show. I'm joined today by Pastor Claire Hooper, child therapist Emma Browne, and we also have a really special guest with us, singer and mum of three, Hope Plumb.
Yay!
Welcome, Hope.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're so glad you are here.
To be here. Thank you.
And today we're going to be exploring how we help our children understand race and diversity, which I think is a huge topic for us to, it's a very emotive topic, isn't it, for us to explore?
I'm always challenged because feel like I'm in the demographic that is fairly privileged. I am, white, middle class, and so it's always difficult, although I'm passionate and I care about people. I always know that sometimes maybe my filter just isn't always, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's just an important conversation and an ongoing conversation that we just need to keep on having. I think as soon as we stop talking about it, that's when problems arise. So I think just to make people aware that it is an issue.
It's real.
You might walk down the street in Bradford or Birmingham, where I'm from, and see so many different races and cultures, but there's a huge difference. And actually, how do we bridge that divide? How are those people living? How is it different from what you may be used to? I think, it's just a conversation we need to keep having.
And with our children,
Yes, so much so.
I find it really interesting because I found that when my children are little, I mean, they're still quite little, they're 9 and 7 now, but they've never seemed to notice a lot. They've got friends from different cultures, from different ethnicities, and they'll tell me all their similarities. And if you say, what are your differences? They'll say, well, she likes football and I like netball. And you're like, okay, well, that's great. And then I think, well, does that mean then that where the world ends up going on this conversation is that it's completely socially impacted? And does that therefore mean we can really change the narrative of that as parents? I'm curious. I have no answers, but I'm curious.
I think it's something to do with having those conversations, because sometimes our children just say, children are so innocent, aren't they? They don't know these complex rules and social things that are going on in the world yet, do they? So they just sometimes say what they see. And actually sometimes as adults, if a child says, oh, Mummy, why's that lady got a different colour skin? Or why's that lady got dark skin? As parents, we can go, oh gosh, come on, let's just move on, and brush those conversations under the carpet. When actually, it's exactly at that moment that we should be opening up those conversations.
I had an experience just like that only the other week with my little boy. So, I mean, this is a huge conversation in itself, but hair products for me are not readily available in Boots, Lloyd, chemists or whatever. I have to go either Amazon Prime it or eBay it or go to a place where there are more black people around. Where I go to buy my hair products, where I can get it cheaper, it's a majority kind of Asian culture. And this shop is incredible. It sells kind of everything. And I took my kids and we walked into the shop and Archie, my little boy, went, Mummy, are we in a different country? Because there was no white person in there. And it was one of those opportunities, Emma, where I should have said, no, obviously I did say no, but we should have engaged in a conversation, but it was just like, no, shh, come on, quick, let's just move on quickly. But really you're so right, I should have, and I probably will today, go back and continue the conversation about kind of where people live and people want to live with other people that are similar to them, and
It's just so difficult.
You bump into that awkwardness of that not knowing what to do. You face your own embarrassment of what your child's saying or doing, especially in the diversity as well. I used to teach adults with a variety of needs. Some physical disabilities of working with wheelchairs, or even just the challenges of life that maybe hit them. Anyway, so my children would come to some of my lessons and they would ask outright, Mummy, why is that person like that? Why are they like this? And there were times when I felt embarrassed, but I just had to gather my thoughts and bend down to their level and just explain in a very kind way what I understood. But even then, sometimes I wondered whether have I offended that person, that I've brought attention to it. Do you know? It's hard to know, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
To get that right.
Yeah. But I do think it is important that we meet our kids where they're at with it as well, because otherwise, like you said, Marina, they don't notice the difference until they do notice the difference.
Yeah.
But we've got to kind of address those situations when they come up, and not just try and hope that someone else is going to do that for us, or try and engineer situations. I just think we need to be, like you've said initially, Hope, have these open conversations right from the start.
That's it. And you know what we're saying about kind of kids not noticing, and I know we were chatting before about the age that maybe your kids do start to notice the difference. I feel for my kids, they've noticed way earlier than other children would do. But I think the reason being is because I'm black and my husband's white.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's just there in front of them that we've got two different skin colours.
Yeah.
So my kids are always saying kind of, okay, well, I'm not as dark as mummy, but I'm not as white as daddy. And it's just a conversation that we have.
Yeah.
So, but they've noticed super young. I mean, my twins are 6 and Betsy's 5. So it's just but it's just an ongoing kind of conversation in our house about different skin colours and what it means. And I don't think they're not seeing a difference between us. It's literally the shade of the skin. That's all it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my kids have, my little boy has, because my husband's Spanish heritage and they're all darker than me and I'm really pale. So they'll notice, for instance, that I have to apply sun lotion. That they're all glowing, not that I'm jealous or resentful, but they'll pull out on that fact. And my son in the car, he did sort of process, what's the point of different skin colours? Like, what's the reason for that? Why did that need to happen? And we just kind of explored, well, actually, different skin reacts different in different types of weather. And if I go to Spain, I'm really burnt. If you guys go, you're having a merry old time. Again, not resentful at all. But actually, I find that... but my kids have noticed other things at really awkward stages, like in the toddler years. I remember a poor elderly lady talking to my daughter and thinking she has a wonderful conversation, and she was just in a stage of life where her voice had really dropped and her clothing was a little ambiguous. And my daughter just looked at her and went, "Are you a man or a lady?" And I was like, oh my goodness. And it's just, it comes up all the time where you just cringe and go, oh gosh. But thankfully, the lady had sort of said, "Oh, I'm an old lady, don't you know? When you get to my age, your voice will go there." And it was really kind of warm and everything. But but I felt that.
Yes.
I felt that shame for her, where I'm just like, oh my goodness.
And that lovely natural curiosity that comes with children, when we don't allow them to ask questions and begin to explore the different and wonderful complexities that God made humankind, we stunt their development as understanding the wonderful complexities of the way that God made mankind. The curiosity, I'm curious. I do want to know. There's questions that sometimes my children have asked. I'm like, that's a really good question. What does your hair feel like? I'm like, I've always wanted to ask that question, but I feel too embarrassed.
Absolutely,
it's so true.
It's so important. And I think, I was thinking that kind of this morning when I was doing my hair, kind of my hair does look different, my hair does feel different, and we just need to explore that and ask the question. It's not going to offend me. Ask me. Please don't just touch it.
I spent hours on this. That is so inconsiderate.
It's not even that. It's just that kind of mauling. It's like when you're pregnant, isn't it? And someone mauls your belly, and you're like, just ask, please. I will say yes, but just ask. Like, don't just do it.
I respect
that. So I just think, by all means, ask the question. Let's again, keep the conversation going.
I think though, as parents, sometimes if we don't know the answers, and if we don't have all the answers, then that's another reason why it's embarrassment, but I think also if we just don't know, sometimes we haven't got all the answers, have we? And I think that's okay to also address. Don't just brush that under the carpet. Do you know what? That's a really good question, and let's think about that. How can we find that out together? Who can we talk to?
I'm curious as well, because I do think we live in a culture at the moment where there is so much political correctness, there's so much politically correct terminology and behaviours, I can't keep up to date with
it's
it.
confusing.
And I think, I'm not quite sure what we're supposed to say at the moment.
Yeah.
I don't know how we're supposed to respond to that.
Gosh, I know.
That's true.
And Jesus was so all about everybody.
Yeah.
And we have, for the need to protect certain kinds of people, we have had to develop a drive in certain areas. So we've had to drive for, even the fact that we're having to cover race and diversity and differences is so not kingdom culture. So not the way that if we lived by the Bible's kingdom culture, we wouldn't have to tackle these things. And in some ways it saddens me, but it doesn't make me want to avoid it. But it does make me sometimes go, why can we not just take the Bible's principles, help teach our children and raise a generation that are not just tolerant and not just embracing, that actually it doesn't affect them. It isn't an issue. Not the word tolerance even, why should I have to have a tolerance for another? No, I'm not. I don't tolerate people. I love people. I love all the complex and wonderful things that God has made.
Absolutely.
And, trying to raise our kids like that.
But that's the absolute ideal, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
and we
I know.
are so far away from that ideal.
I'm always over on that.
I know, and it is.
That's why you're both here. Opposite ends of the spectrum.
A realist and an idealist.
But I work with young people who are affected and who have been impacted by kind of being felt to be being bullied for difference, not just with race but with their belief system, with all sorts of difference. And it can have a huge impact on young people's mental health, their identity, their self-esteem. So it is an issue. That would be a real ideal, wouldn't it?
It's the vision ahead of us.
It is, absolutely.
We've got to work out how to get there.
Exactly.
It's all right, I will be the diplomat. And in the meantime, let's have a listen to what our kids have to say.
Brilliant.
We'll check out from the children.
And action!
I think the thing that makes us human is we're the only things that can make things like this room. Nothing else can make things like this. Like an ant can make an anthill, a bird can make a nest, but none of them can make something like this.
Well, we're all special. Like, some people might be able to do things that other people can't, but you're still special in that same way.
Because God didn't want us all to be the same, and they wanted us to have different personalities than everyone else.
Why do you think God wants us all to be different?
I don't know.
And if we were all the same, then we'll just be like having the same thing every single day. We would all look the same, we would all be doing the same thing, we would all go to the same school. Everything we do would be the same.
If I described every single thing that made people different from each other, then, we'd probably be here for the rest of eternity.
Yeah.
Like, some people are big, some people are small, some people talk fast and loud and confidently, some people not so much. But although we all have our differences, we're all made in God's image, and although our skin might be a different colour, although maybe our eyes might be a different colour, although maybe you might be big and I might be small, and we're all the same in one way. We're all made in His image. No matter what we look like, no matter what we are, they're all special in God's eyes.
Do you think people should all be treated the same, and why?
I think everyone should be treated differently.
Because we all have different needs, and if we're all treated the same, then one of us might get poorly for being treated the same as everyone else, and they need different needs for everyone else.
So, do you think that everybody deserves respect?
Yes, I don't really think that everybody should be treated exactly the same, as Leah and Zach have both said. But we do need the same levels of, we need to be treated the same, with the same respect for each other's different needs.
If we weren't showing people respect, we wouldn't be exactly listening to the questions. We wouldn't be listening, and we wouldn't be very we wouldn't exactly know what to say. We wouldn't be listening. So it's good to show respect to others.
I would love to give you a bit of background on that video, okay? Because I spent about 45 minutes on this topic with these kids. And you know, when it came to actually discussing the nitty-gritty of race and diversity, their minds just didn't go there. And I really struggled with that. I was like, oh, I couldn't be more obvious. And I didn't want to ask leading questions to create the answer I'm looking for. I felt that's always really important. So I'm quite open with my questioning so they can lead the discussion. But then thinking about it now and watching it, you know, all three of those kids. So Zach, his parents are from, oh gosh, if I get this wrong, I think they're from Zambia. But I may be wrong, so disclaimer to the mother. So I think they're from Zambia and they're living in Britain, so it's very multicultural. Lilia was born in Spain. She's my daughter. She's got her dad, who is half Spanish, her grandpa is Spanish, and I'm white British. And then Joshua at the end, his mum is very blonde, white British, and his dad is Paraguayan. Wow. And I actually think maybe they were completely the three wrong children to be doing that interview with.
Because they're very embracing.
Yeah.
Really? I mean, they're so embracing.
Just what they
talking about
live.
God's image, you know, we are made in God's image. God, and then the scripture that talks about man looks at the outward appearance and God looks at the heart. It's humanity that puts these titles and labels and differences and makes it an issue. It's not God that makes that an issue, because he connects spirit to spirit. And actually, of course, our actions lead us to places, but our faith and who we are and how we connect to our Father God is that. So when I say to my kids in the morning, which I do every morning, go and learn something to make the world a better place, and that is like, I feel like a genuine thing I want them to learn.
But I think that race and inclusion and diversity and acceptance, that was a big message of Jesus. Like that was a priority for him. And there's a lot of issues in the world that you can cover, and he didn't get to live everything out. You know, there's a lot for us to understand from what he taught us. But that was a very definite, you know, you've got Peter's vision on the rooftop of all the different food. You've got him with the woman at the well. You've got him with this talking with the story of the Good Samaritan. You know, everything that we put in place, Jesus did actually try and smash that 2,000 years ago.
He
didn't try, he taught us to smash that 2,000 years ago. So he failed at that, but you know, that was what he put in place.
There's some proactivity that's got to go on there, hasn't there, to change this around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
So what do you think we can do to, as mums of the next generation, we are in a really powerful position where actually we've been given purity to begin with, you know, we've been given open minds to begin with. So how can we really help these kids to develop around a more positive narrative?
I think it starts with us. I think it starts with, you know, kind of having conversations like we are today, and being able to kind of look at our lives, look at our own prejudices potentially, look at our own value bases, look at look at our worlds, how small are our worlds, who is in our world, and actually, we live, in an area where there is huge multicultures, but how narrow is our small little network, and how do we start to break down some of those barriers, or how do we start to reach out? So I absolutely think it's got to start with us, because actually, if we want to live this out, we can't be separate. We've got to kind of start and it's got to be an active thing. We can have the conversations, but then we've got to kind of put that into practice, haven't we?
Yeah, that's the challenge.
And do that, because I think it's easier to hate hate breeds through separation. And I think when you get up close, it's really difficult to hate somebody up close. I think that's the reality, isn't it?
True. I do think that's reality.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think it is easy to hate what you don't know, to hate what you don't understand. I think that's an amazing phrase. So when you get up close to someone, you realise that actually we all bleed red blood at the end of the day, you know. Yeah, that's so important. And I think for myself, I was adopted, and I was adopted into a white family. So again, kind of that the talk about race was just really open from a really young age. And so my mum and dad were white, but that never, I remember going through the adoption process. I remember going to court and all of that. So it was never a surprise, you're adopted, obviously because of the different skin colours. So I've again grown up with this, like those children, you know, like the kids in the VT. It's just been my life, and it as a matter of fact, I've been around probably more white people than I have black people, just because, you know, church was mostly white people, but my mum tried really hard to take me to, I guess, do different activities where there were maybe more black people, so that I had an understanding of my origins, which was really heritage, and which was really important. And I think for kind of a middle-aged white woman, I think that's quite progressive. You know, in the early 80s, I think that was quite progressive thinking. So for my children, again, they're growing up in quite a white majority area, but my husband is half Argentinian, so all of their cousins, like there's 11 cousins altogether, and we all live really, really close to each other. So their cousins are all slightly different shades of that kind of, you know, Latin tone, and then you've got my kids that are darker, and so they are growing up in a family where there is a variety of skin colour, but at school there's not that many black children. I think I could count them on 2 fingers maybe.
And they're both mine.
Exactly. And then, there's a few mixed race kind of kids kind of scattered throughout the school. But I think I need to take a leaf out of my mum's book and try and educate the kids about my Zimbabwean, you know, heritage, and just open their eyes to there's more than maybe just like the white culture isn't the only culture. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's really important actually to because I home educate my children. Right. And so quite often I will make conscious decisions to bring in, there's a poet, Grace Nichols, and there's a lot of black poetry in there. And there's different dialects that we do and different literature that we explore, and artists of different origins. And this is an artist from India, this is an artist from Paris, this is... So to try and say, do you know what, we're not the only ones that produce. And what we produce is not, you know, I'd say we, like white culture, that's not all that's out there, but there's so much in other cultures that you can... you know, draw and pull on, and you know, and look at body art. Let's spend a day doing body art and see where that comes from, and look into that. And I think that we're always talking, aren't we, on the Mum Show about wanting our kids to be free and wanting them to have their minds opened. We know what happens when we close ourselves in, and we know that Christ came for freedom. And there's such a rich world out there, isn't there, for us to try and lock them in and this is how we do things and that's it.
And I think possibly it can come from a place of wanting to keep our kids safe, and you know, I've spoken really positively about my mum and dad because they're amazing, but there is also a slight kind of narrow worldview in that when my school went to visit a mosque, I wasn't allowed to go, right? I was kept at home, and it's that kind of, oh no, you can't do that because, I don't know, you might get influenced, or I'd love to, it's possibly a conversation I need to have, kind of, what was that about? What were you protecting me from? Because I think it's actually more dangerous, right? To put those barriers around.
Ignorance isn't empowering.
No.
Yeah, I childminded for a number of years, actually, home-based childcare, and a few of my friends that were believers were really concerned about some of the people that I childminded for, which is funny because I'm like, I don't know why, but there was a family that was a really amazing family that were from their own religion, actually. They created their own religion, and he used to say his own prayers to age-old spirits, and he would sit there and pray at the dinner table. And I was like, bro, you know, I'm not going to not have you in my home because of that, because I don't believe that threatens my faith. And one of the little girls was from a pagan worship family. And again, it's not that I'm celebrating another culture or another belief, but I had no reason for it to threaten my family. This is a child in my home that I wanted to care for and love and look after. And actually, in Corinthians, it says this: even though I am free of the demands and expectations of everyone, I have become a voluntary servant to any and order and to reach a wide range of people people for Christ. There's such an openness in that. And it goes on actually, which is not totally relevant to say about the things that even though I reach these people, I'm not like these people. Even though some of it's more in a negative connotation. That's why I don't want to read the whole passage, because in actual fact, I think that top scripture encompasses all of that. How we have to voluntarily take an attitude of serving so that all can see Christ through us.
I think it's really important. I was a bit like you, Hope, in that I think my parents were so concerned about the outside influences that were somehow that they kind of needed to kind of keep us separate, so we weren't allowed to watch certain programs or go certain places. Or but actually, for my children, I want them to kind of have a spirit and of kind of non-judgment, of openness, of acceptance, of love, of vulnerability, of courage, all of those things that we talk so much about on this show. And I don't think we can do that and keep, because we're Christians, that we have to keep ourselves separate and protected. It's just the opposite of what the gospel is saying to us, isn't it?
Yeah. It's really interesting. We were talking earlier about an experience I'd had as a teenager when they'd had a lot of refugee men move down our road, hundreds. And so I would be one of the only females walking into town. And from their culture, it was completely acceptable to, I don't know what you call it, like catcall? Heckle, shout at women, pull on your coat, pull on your bag, all this sort of thing, try and get your attention. And like as a 14-year-old girl up until 18, that was terrifying. Really, really scary. And I never really understood why later in my narrative I ended up working with refugees. And I thought, that's really interesting. How did that kind of happen? But when I look back at it, my parents' response to my intimidation, my fear, my difficult experience was that they became integrated with some really nice refugee families who we had dinner with, who came to play, my dad would go up to, they would put them in like a prison to remove them and send them back, and my dad would take us up there, and my dad would go and look after these people. They would witness to this people. We had people who were being saved, we had people who were already saved and coming over, and they would just be welcomed in. And I think there's a lesson there, isn't there, that actually 100%. The way to deal with these things isn't to isolate our kids, but it's to show a better way.
Right, absolutely. And I think, Claire, what you said about kind of welcoming these children into your home, what you were doing, you were being Jesus to them. No matter what their race or their religion, you were showing the love of Christ, and that's what we need to be doing. I think, so important.
It's a topic, isn't it? Do you know, I think you said right at the beginning, didn't you, about keeping the conversation going.
That's it.
Just there can't be at any point that we stop having this discussion and just brushing things under the carpet, being afraid to talk about things.
So good. Hope, we've loved having you here today.
Have we finished?
We've finished already. You could keep going all day,
I really could, I'm sorry.
It's been so much fun having you. We really appreciate the wisdom you've brought as well. Thank you. Well, we hope you guys have enjoyed today's show. Please do, if you want to hear more about Hope and about what she's up to, or more about the topics we're discussing on the show, then do head over to our website at promisecollective.co.uk. And in the meantime, we hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll catch up with you very soon.
Hello parents, don't forget to say hello. We're at promisecollective.co.uk. Bye!